This is Mr. Dietrich. Got some tips for future social studies teachers and teacher candidates in general. Don't have to teach social studies to benefit from this video. Everyone has to get a license. Everyone has to get their certification by passing the Praxis. So how are you going to do it? Option one, wing it. That's what I did when I passed my social studies content quiz. Don't recommend it, but I had recently taken most of the coursework, so it was all really fresh in my mind. I felt pretty comfortable not really doing intensive studying. Number two, study. This is what I would recommend. This is how I approached the middle school science Praxis because I did not have the coursework. It had been years since I had taken science. I studied, passed pretty easily. When I had to pass 3 special education exams in 10 days, I studied, did not wing it, and I was pretty comfortable and passed those pretty easily. Those are your 2 options. It depends on where you stand, what you have been doing. If you took a lot of your social studies coursework year 1, year 2, now it's year 4, and it's been a while, I would suggest you study. I would suggest everyone study. How do you study? Buy a book. Buy a book, buy a book, buy a book. Get on Amazon, get one of these. There's many different examples of these study books that go over all the content that you need. Buy it and read it every day. Go through it. You may want to take notes. Sometimes I try to do that approach, but then you find out it just becomes too intensive, and it's best just to read through it over, do some highlighting, read through it over, do some highlighting. How do you know which one to select? You can sort it based on review. I would suggest clicking on the reviews and reading what other teacher candidates have said and see if one of those people in their review studies the same way that you do. And if they do, then that's probably the text for you. And you need to start this early, not the week before, not the night of, a couple months ahead. Get that book and just slowly grind towards getting a better understanding of the knowledge. The other thing that I would do is watch videos. I did this for the special education certifications. I did this for the science certification. Now, special education, I felt pretty comfortable because it's a lot of lifelike scenarios, and I've been in the classroom long enough that I could handle most of the situations. But there still is plenty of academic content and vocabulary and basic facts on that test. Same thing with science. And you can get that academic content and basic facts from many different YouTube video sources. You're just trying to gain basic knowledge. You're not trying to master it. You're not trying to teach it. You just need to know how to answer a multiple choice question. And so watch the videos on YouTube every morning when you wake up. Make a playlist. Throw the playlist on when you're driving to work, you're driving to school, instead of a podcast or instead of music. And slowly you're going to pick up on some of this vocabulary. Slowly you're going to absorb a fact here or there. And the more facts you can absorb, the better your chances are going to be on the test. Develop a schedule. Plan early and often. When are you going to read this book? When are you going to watch videos? And what topics are you going to cover? Go through that schedule and then repeat that schedule. Don't study one topic at the beginning of the month and then never come back to it. Maybe have a weekly, bi-weekly schedule where you cover all the content throughout a week, and you come back through the next week and you cover all the content again. Maybe it takes 2 weeks to run through, and then you run through it again for another 2 weeks. Or you go every week, and then you add and you subtract things that you think you have mastered. But again, we're just trying to lay a foundation so that we get enough information so you can pass. Don't want to overload ourselves, but you're just trying to increase your chances, increase your odds. You're not trying to be the best. You're just trying to make minimal gains, small little marginal gains that'll put you over the hump. That'll make you feel confident going into the quiz or the test. This is not a quiz. Again, you don't have to be creative. You're not trying to create lessons. You're not trying to be an expert writing a dissertation on any of these topics. You just really need to know the facts, the definitions, sequence of events, the basics. And you can get that watching a YouTube video on a second screen. You can get that listening to a podcast. You can get that breezing through the texts that are provided. Also, with those study books, they give you examples of what you should expect in form of questions. And the questions aren't really that difficult. Now, what are the topics? Again, we're trying to prepare. You want to wing it. But if you've watched this much of the video, you're obviously not a wing it person. If you probably clicked on the video at all, then you're probably not a wing it person. So again, we're developing a strategy with testing and what tools we're going to use, the books, the YouTube videos. Now we want to be specific in what kind of content we need to make sure that we're covering. You're going to be required to know some US history, world history, government, geography, economics, and a little bit of the psychology. Not that big. So you have to ask yourself, where's my weakness? What are my strengths? If you know your strengths, don't use your time studying your strengths. Use your time boosting up the weaknesses. You can't make any gains on the test. If you were already going to get 100% on US history, then you have wasted your time studying US history. If you're already going to get 18 out of 20 questions and maybe now you get 19 out of 20, then that time wasn't used wisely. Whereas you get 10 to 20 on geography and you I wish I would have spent more time on that. If you just would have spent a little bit more time on geography, you could turn that 10 into a 15 out of 20. And that's 5 more points. So think about how you're going to allocate your time, what you're going to focus on. I mean, you can cover everything, but what do you want to cover twice? What video do you want to click on twice? What's going to get that extra play? Again, you're not trying to pass or trying to master it or ace it or get a high score. And I'll pat myself on the back and say, yes, I've gotten some exceptional high scores on the social studies, on the science, and the special education. Guess what? No one ever sees that score. It's only me looking at the computer screen after it's all said and done, and then it's gone, it's over. No one will ever ask me about it. No one ever cares about it. There won't be a parade. You get 30 seconds to realize, wow, I did awesome. And then you have the next 30 seconds say, wow, I probably studied too hard. I really didn't need to work this hard to get this super awesome grade that means nothing. You're just trying to pass. That doesn't mean take it easy, but it just means that's how you should adjust your approach. Don't stress out, try to master topics. Just try to memorize and remember the basic facts. So here is how I went at it when I would go at social studies, or if I were to go at it, because obviously I wung it for social studies. But if I were to do social studies in my perspective, I wouldn't worry about history. Although when I took the exam, it had been quite a while since I had taken the American history classes. Those were the first courses I took, but they had all stuck. It was all pretty ingrained in my brain, and much of what you learn in middle school and high school is the same stuff you learn in college. I felt pretty comfortable there. Didn't think I needed to study that much. World history, I'm not as confident and comfortable with. So I elevated that in my study habits, but I didn't elevate it too much because this one I had just recently taken a lot of Western civilization courses, so it was all really fresh. I also took those courses via independent online learning, so I had to teach myself, which really made the stuff stick. I had to actually read the textbook, so I felt pretty comfortable there. Didn't need to go back over that. Government, politics, that was all pretty easy for me. Those courses were spread throughout my college career, but I was pretty well versed in that, so I didn't need to spend as much time. Geography, not really a strength of mine. Not a lot of coursework. I did, though, recently, before the exam, take several geography courses. So that made me feel pretty comfortable. But all in all, I felt like I do really need to go back over it because it wasn't as, it doesn't click as much with me as the other topics. That was something I wanted to devote a little more time to, but not too much because it's only 15%. Economics was easy for me. No worries there. And then psychology, I didn't take a lot of psychology coursework. And most of us don't. That's why it doesn't take up a big part of our test. So I did want to give a little bit more focus, but I didn't want to focus too much because it was only 10%. How many psychology questions was I really going to run into? 3 or 4? And they're not going to be the most tough. I mean, even if you don't study, best case, you probably at least get half of them right. Maybe if you know a little bit, you'll get 3 out of the 4 right. So I didn't feel like it was necessary for me to study too much. But I did want to make sure that when I did study, I paid extra attention to those psychology subjects. So develop your routine. You know, what day do you want to study this? What do you want to study that? And then make sure that you go back through it. Make sure you cover all your bases, cover them to the degree that you want, and then go back through each week. That's going to increase your confidence. When you go in with confidence, it's not going to be hard to pass. You may not be at the best test score, but there are plenty of social studies teachers in this world. You've seen them, you know them. They may not be as sharp as a tack. They all pass this test. If they can pass this test, you can pass this test. If you practice and study for this test, then you'll easily pass the test. So you want to wing it, wing it. I would suggest put in some time at the very least. Thanks for joining me. Like, subscribe, share the video with other future teachers, any teacher you know. Thanks for having me, guys. You're doing great, kid.